In addition to the changes and adaptations of Islam, we're also going to see a number of changes during this period with Christianity in Europe. Ding, 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 ding. Here is another one of those things that you should put like a star on for a massive, earth-shattering, world history-changing event that takes place during now this time period. So if you ever have a continuity and change over time question that deals with anything that spans the years 1450 to 1750, a massive, massive change that we're going to have is the Protestant Reformation. All right? So in 1517... Martin Luther, a German Catholic monk, in 1517, on Halloween, if you need to remember that, on Halloween in 1517, Martin Luther, a Catholic monk, will nail to the door of the church in his hometown, what's that? Yes, nail to the door of his church in Wittenberg, Germany, what become known as the 95 Theses. Martin Luther's 95 opinions, 95 things he has problems with regard to the Roman Catholic Church. And Martin Luther's 95 Theses begins what is known as the Protestant Reformation. Protestant Reformation, 2 words. People protesting the Roman Catholic Church, protesting the practices of the Roman Catholic Church, and moving to reform the Christian church. So it combines protest with reform. And through that Reformation, they create new churches. Martin Luther starts the first, the Lutheran Church, where he, in his 95 Theses, will challenge Catholic practices. Obviously, there's a lot of them. We'll highlight a couple of them for you. First, he had some serious issues with the Catholic Church's practice of selling what were known as indulgences. Indulgences. Essentially meaning the Roman Catholic Church held the key to the afterlife for its practitioners. And if you led a life free of sin, or you had your sins absolved, you got to go to heaven. Yay. By the late Middle Ages, and certainly into the 1500s, when Martin Luther is working in Germany as a Catholic monk, the Roman Catholic Church is beginning to offer indulgences for sale. An indulgence is an absolution from sin. All right? You do something bad. You like it, the Roman Catholics in this room, you know that you would go to confession at your church. You would ask for forgiveness. The priest would give you something to do, maybe some prayers to say, and tell you to avoid such sins in the future. And you go on with your day. All right? The church essentially in this high Middle Ages, by the 1400s into the 1500s, was selling these. And they were selling them for a good reason. Why does anybody sell anything? To make some money. To make some money. And this is what they needed money for. This is St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. It is a magnificent complex of buildings and architecture and artwork. In St. Peter's Basilica, this is going to cost a lot of money. And here's an interior picture of it so you guys can see what's going on the inside. Here's people down here, right? So this is no joke, right? So what's that?
Was that in France?
No, this is in Rome. This is at the seat. This is the seat of the Roman Catholic Church. All right. So if you go to hear the Pope offer a mass in Rome, he's doing it at St. Peter's. All right. So the church was building this, and they needed a lot of money, so they encouraged their priests around Europe, around Western Europe, to sell indulgences. And in Germany, this was happening, and here's a line of people, and they've got their little pile of money, and they're offering payment for this absolution of sins. Well, Martin Luther's got a problem with this. He doesn't think one should be able to get out of any sinning that they've done based on their financial wherewithal. So that's just one of his 95 theses. He also had an issue with the fact that the church was practiced in the Latin language. Despite the fact that the Latin language had essentially died off as a language of state more than 1,000 years ago, the Roman Catholic Church was still practicing in Latin. So if you in 1500 were living in Germany and you spoke German and you didn't know any Latin and you went to Mass as you were supposed to do every week, it would be presented in the Latin language that you quite possibly couldn't understand. And the Bibles that were all available only in the Latin language. So even if you were a German that could read, you likely couldn't read the Latin Bible. So your understanding of the church and of the faith only came from the priests who would share that information with you. It was hard to gain that individual relationship with God when you couldn't read the Bible. And now, add on to that the fact that most people didn't know the Bible. Now today, most Christians probably have a Bible somewhere in their house. In 1500 and before, most people didn't have Bibles. Most people couldn't read. Why would you have a book if you can't read? And books were ridiculously expensive because how is every Bible produced? They're written by monks in monasteries by hand. That makes them very time-consuming to write. Can you imagine writing the Bible? That makes it very time-consuming to write, and it therefore makes the Bibles very expensive. So hardly anybody had their hands on these things, but this is going to change in the late 1400s, coincidentally enough, in Germany, with the invention of a printing press of movable type. So you could put little tiles of movable type onto this printing press and put a piece of paper in there and ink it up and press it down, and now you can press your own paper. And the first book that will ever be printed on this Gutenberg printing press, the inventor of this was Johannes Gutenberg. The first book that will ever be printed, what's that? That was in Genghis Khan, yes. The first book that will ever be printed is the Gutenberg, what's known today as the Gutenberg Bible. If you go to Washington, D.C., you can see one of these. It's in the Library of Congress. You can see one of them. There's a handful of Gutenberg Bibles around the world, but there's one in the Library of Congress. Yes, sir?
And then how it works is the Gutenberg has a case.
Okay.
The lower case are the small letters, and then the uppercase, they're like this big case.
Is that why we use the words uppercase and lowercase?
Yes.
Ah! I never knew that. Is that true?
It is.
That sounds like something I want to believe, but it might not be true.
No, it is true. It is true. The letter that the ink, like, you have to change the letters if you want to print something, right? All the letters are stacked in the lowercase, a lowercase.
I love it. I love it, and I so want to believe it.
Letters.
I've got to verify it for myself, and I will do that at the end of this blog. I love it, though. Thank you. What?
Yeah,
that is awesome. Oh, man, I love it when that kind of stuff happens. Thank you, Tyler.
Because the Gutenberg, they have to type, they have to press it with, ink blocks of letters.
Of each letter.
Yeah, so each letter has, its own ink block. So they put it in a case, and then the small letters are in the lower section of the case, whilst the capital letters on the top. So the top letters are called uppercase, so that's why when we say uppercase, we mean...
Oh my God, that's so cool.
Mind blown, right?
Now, yeah. You can still use the word until...
Yeah, we do. That's awesome. Very cool.
That's why I'm in your quiz bowl team.
Well done. All right. Man. Okay, anyway. So when Gutenberg starts using his printing press and starts printing Bibles with them, guess what happens to the price of Bibles? They dramatically drop. Now, still, most people can't read and most people can't afford a Bible still. But more people are going to be able to afford books now and afford a Bible. And so they start learning how to read. So when more reading material is available, guess what? People learn how to read. And people in Germany begin to desire to read a book in their own language, not in Latin. In what we call here's a fancy word, the vernacular. The vernacular. The vernacular is the language of the community. It's the language that everybody speaks. That's your vernacular. So rather than Latin, which is what the religion was in, Germans wanted to read the Bible in the vernacular, in German. Frenchmen, some wanted to read the Bible in French. English people wanted to read the Bible in English. And as more and more and more people are going to be open to reading the Bible for themselves and having this personal relationship with the religion that they may not have ever been able to have because the church was always a middleman between them. we're going to see further breaks in the Roman Catholic Church. First, it's the Lutherans. But then in France, not long after Martin Luther, a guy named John Calvin is going to start his own offshoot of Christianity, which becomes known as Calvinism. You guys probably remember hearing about this in APUSH, right? Because this had a lot to do with the Protestant movement of like Pilgrims and Puritans to the United States. These people their origins were in Calvinism. They believed in predestination, that God had preordained what is going to happen to every individual, and it doesn't, like, you need to follow the rules of the church, but your good works or good deeds didn't decide whether you got into heaven or not. It was already predetermined. You better be good, but it was already predetermined for you. This is what the Calvinists believe. In England, maybe one of the more interesting stories of the Protestant Reformation is when King Henry VIII. King Henry VIII wanted a divorce because his wife didn't bear him a son. King Henry VIII wanted a divorce, but the Pope refused to allow that divorce for that reason.
Anglican Church.
So Henry VIII would break from the Roman Catholic Church, found his own church called the Anglican Church, or the Church of England.
Yeah.
The Anglican Church, which is essentially identical to Roman Catholicism, except the Pope is not the head of the church anymore. The king is. And guess what? The king can get his divorce. So we're going to see this, and then a number of others. Guys, once you break the seal on, hey, the Roman Catholic Church is the be-all, end-all Western Catholic Church, like it has been for 1,500 years. Once you break that, once you allow, once the first Protestant Reformation movement with Martin Luther happens, that makes it much easier for any other individual to start his own offshoot branch. And now there are literally dozens upon dozens of sects of Christianity. Roman Catholicism remains the biggest sect of Christianity in the world, but all of these Protestant sects together become a formidable minority within the Roman Catholic faith. Yes?
You're saying that in the Anglican Church, the King of England...
The King of England is the head of the church.
Then would that be like Cicero?
Kind of like that, yeah.
He's head of the church,
Sure.
and then he's also
Yep.
head of the state.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. Now, the Catholics aren't just going to let this happen without question. They will usher in the late 1500s, or the to late 1500s. Yes, ma'am? John Calvin.
He's also the namesake of Calvin and Hobbes.
He is, yes.
Calvin Klein.
The Catholics aren't gonna just throw in the towel here. Remember, the Roman Catholic Church was the biggest and most powerful entity, not only religiously speaking, but politically speaking as well, in Western Europe. You guys remember it was like the Roman Catholic Pope that decided how Spain and Portugal would divide their territories around the world? He's a pretty important guy, and he's not going to give that up. So the Catholics will go through a period of time known as the Counter-Reformation. The Counter-Reformation is the Catholic response to the Reformation, to the Protestant Reformation, where the Catholics will move to offer their own reforms in hopes of stopping the spread of Protestant faiths. Counter-Reformation. Yes. So what I would always like to do back in the day with my classes is I would do these like umbrellas of faith, of religion, and we've got like Christianity is under a big umbrella, right? And originally the whole Christian umbrella was the Roman Catholic faith. I want a better marker so people on the interwebs can see, but they can't, so they won't. So it used to be like Catholic. That means universal. It was the church, the original Christian church. And then we remember, you guys might remember, around the year 1056, we have the Great Schism that split between now Eastern Orthodox Christianity and now Roman Catholicism. Well, now, after 1517, this umbrella gets split, and now you've got Roman Catholicism and now you got the Protestant churches, right? But they all still believe in the most important central tenets of Christianity, right? And then within Protestantism, this umbrella is going to split dozens of times, all right?
Calvinism, then
Lutheranism and Anglicanism and Protestant or Presbyterians and all other kinds.
But for the Orthodox Church, it remains in Russia, right?
Well, in the Orthodox Church, you've got Russian Orthodox and you've got Greek Orthodox, and you see you've got a lot of different national Orthodox churches. So anyhow, the Catholics will counter this with their own Reformation, known as the Counter-Reformation. One aspect of the Counter-Reformation you guys should be familiar with is the origins of what are known as the Jesuits. Jesuits. You guys might have heard of a school called the University of Detroit, Mercy, or it's the high school, University of Detroit, Jesuit. It's a Jesuit school. One aspect of the Jesuit order, this is an order of monks, essentially, that would attempt to spread Catholic ideology, and not surprisingly, they started a lot of colleges around the United States, like the University of Detroit here, and Xavier, and Loyola University. All of these are Jesuit schools, in hopes of stemming the spread of the Protestant Reformation. And so what we have after the Reformation is now a divided Europe, divided religiously. It used to be Eastern Orthodox Christianity and Roman Catholic Christianity. But now you've got Protestant Christians in the north, like Lutherans in Scandinavia and northern Germany, right? You got Calvinists starting to pop up in France. You've got England breaking off from the Roman Catholic Church. And this is going to go forward to cause some great political divides within Europe. For example, remember the Pope used to have some authority over all of these Roman Catholic rulers before 1517. Well, as many of them are no longer Roman Catholic, the Pope loses that authority. So the Pope is never going to again be what the Pope once was. Further, you're going to have a lot of conflict, because now England and France, or France and Germany, aren't just going to have beef with each other because of maybe political or boundary issues, but now there's going to be religious issues between them. Now you can literally have, like, Spain, Catholic, that remains vehemently Catholic, going to war against England, right? And remember the Spanish Armada. Catholic Spain going to war against Protestant England. And religion is an aspect to that war. You guys might have heard of a war called the 30 Years' War. We'll talk more about this at a later date. But the 30 Years' War was, in large part, a religious war between Catholics and Protestants. So Western Europe, that has never been strongly united, never any strong central authority in Western Europe, outside of that Pope holding them all together, now they've lost that. All right? So even more division in Western Europe, even more competition in Western Europe between states. Good? Good. Yes?
I have a question. You said for the Protestant Reformation,
Yeah.
there was push for churches being given mass in vernacular language.
Yes.
Does the Catholic do the same, until the very modern day? Because I see some Vietnamese church doing mass in Vietnamese.
Yep, the Roman Catholic Church in the 1960s officially made the proclamation that masses can be presented in the vernacular, in the local language. So before the like when my mom was young and she went to church, when she went to Catholic church when she was a kid, it was done in Latin. But in the 1960s, that changed. There's a conference called Vatican II, and that changed. And then throughout the Catholic world, the masses could be given now in the vernacular. So, like, when I go to a Roman Catholic church, it's done in English. Now, there's still songs that have Latin in it. There's still some Latin phrasing that pops up here and there, but it's in English now. Okay, a couple other things we want to mention. Obviously, the biggest change, the biggest star that we put within our notes is the connections between the New World and the Old World. Well, when these, starting with the Catholics, moved from Spain and Portugal across the Atlantic, right, and into the Caribbean and into South America, they're obviously going to take Christianity with them. So they're going to spread. That's why today, all of Latin America, virtually all of Latin America and the Caribbean, they're Catholics, all right? Where's the Pope from? Where's the Roman Catholic Pope from? Yeah, it's Argentina, right? He's a South American Pope, right? The first time in the history of the Roman Catholic Church that a Pope is coming from South America, all right? So that is just like the culmination of what began in 1492 with Roman Catholic Christians making their way to the New World. So Roman Catholicism is going to spread across the Atlantic. Maybe we can say that's another aspect of the Columbian Exchange, right? But other people are going to go as well. We're going to talk next week about the millions of slaves that will be brought across what's known as the Middle Passage. That middle passage of the triangular trade system. Millions of West African slaves coming across to the New World. And as they come across, they're also going to bring their own traditional religious beliefs. Maybe some animist beliefs or traditional ancestor veneration beliefs from West Africa. And as they are now in the Americas, we're going to see some new changes to religious belief in the Americas. For example, in the present-day country of Haiti, the French who are going to control, and the French are Catholics at this time, the French who are going to be controlling Haiti are going to not allow the African slaves that they are forcing to work for them to practice their native religions. So these African slaves will just adapt. And they will adopt Catholic saints, for example, saints within the Roman Catholic Church. They will adopt them as representations of their traditional deities that they prayed to in West Africa. And this is going to develop into a religion that's known as Vodun, or you guys have heard as voodoo. All right? So African slaves will begin to adopt aspects of Roman Catholicism and blend them with their traditional beliefs. So the French overseers, the French in charge of the colony, wouldn't necessarily recognize that they're not practicing Catholics, but they could still worship their traditional gods, just through the form of these new Catholic saints and Mary and such like that. So here we look at a little voodoo shrine, and as we look at all of these things, and we got the skulls, and we got all kinds of things going on, and a lot of offerings, what do we see at the very top of it? A Roman Catholic cross. Very good. In Cuba, we see a similar aspect, except in Cuba it's not the French, it's the Spanish, where a religion called Santeria will be born that will blend traditional African, West African beliefs with Spanish Catholicism. And this is, guys, just the definition of syncretism. And it's another one of these changes that's going to come when Old World and New World come in contact with each other.